So what can people do if they are interested in investing in underrepresented founders? Where do they go to source those deals? Where do you guys go to source those deals?
Yeah. So shameless plug, if you'd like to invest in underrepresented founders, let us know. We actually have an initiative called Backstage Crowd where you can invest with us, and we'll help you find that deal flow. But I think to answer the question more broadly, effectively it's being available to underrepresented founders and understanding what your network looks like and who you have in your network. There are thousands of qualified underrepresented founders, and at Backstage we access this great deal flow through a variety of ways. One of them is through our open application process. So for example, anybody can go at any time to backstagecapital.com/apply and apply for investment. But we also get access to founders in other ways as well. We get introductions from other investors, from founders in our portfolio, and we're deliberate. We'll do outreach in certain areas or speak at events and meet founders and things of that nature.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like this is something that's really broken within venture. Like if you think about kind of the space in general, it has not really evolved in terms of how people do business, and has not kept up with kind of especially the demographic shifts that we're seeing, kind of especially in the US. So now, if you're forward looking, you're going to see that the country is going to be, minority majority country within a couple decades. And if you're still operating by, what's in your own closed network, maybe you're not actually being exposed to some of these demographic shifts that are happening today and then will be in the future. So kind of as Christie was mentioning, one of the kind of tactics that Backstage has been using is really providing access to founders. So if you're interested in investing in more diverse founders, it's kind of being open to those kind of demographic shifts and realizing that things are kind of changing in the world around us. But also, how do I capture these founders? A lot of it is that you can be open to meeting folks that are not just, a warm intro away. It's more about like providing that access. So, opening yourself up to opportunity is really where it starts. And I think we've provided good ways to do that through, again, like the open application. But I think also being open to different opportunities that you might not know all about, and being open to a founder explaining to you and educating you about an area that might not be something that you're already aware of as a problem. So I think it's kind of on those fronts.
And just to add one thing, if you're serious about diversifying your reach to underrepresented founders, the best way to do that is to start with your network. Look at your LinkedIn, look at your other social networks, and look at who you're connected to and what the demographics look like. If you have work to do, then start there by getting to know more diverse people in your field and broaden your reach. So if you're used to warm intros, broaden your reach of who can give you a warm intro, and you'll start to see things change.
So Backstage has done a really great job of not only investing and seeing those returns, but building a brand as a fund. And that, I think, is a big part of what attracts founders, right? Who see and hear Arlen's story and say, this reminds me of me, or these are the same struggles that I've gone through. But even once founders come in, and let's say someone is able to create that sort of open access brand for themselves, oftentimes we see that there are still biased questions that are asked. We see this all the time when investors ask female founders biased questions. And I'm sure that happens across the board. So what are some key questions that you think are important to ask that remove some of this unconscious bias when you are vetting founders?
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions really need to be framed in more potential versus a lot of underrepresented folks get asked questions that are essentially highlighting some of the risk or the concern that the investors have, where I really think if you're being as open to the idea of investing in underrepresented founders, you really should be looking in potential. So I think even framing the questions, like I think there's a study that was done with women founders where it's not really, a lot of investors are not necessarily asking kind of the upside or kind of the opportunity that they're working on, but more on, the downside and kind of risk protection, if that makes sense. So I think even if it's not specific questions, it's even how you think about the questions so that you're keeping your mind open to see an opportunity and learn about that versus saying, oh, I've never seen that, or how can they possibly do that? And you don't have this. Kind of all those negative questions of, framed in risk are really limiting. And I think that's something that I've noticed, just kind of seeing and hearing founders that experience that from VCs that don't really get them. I think they're not really trying to understand.
And something that investors can do to solve for this, because I think a lot of it happens in the moment, right? An investor will be talking to a founder, maybe they're talking to a female founder, and it's a product that's aimed at a women's market, and the investor feels like they can't identify. And so maybe they start shutting down or not able to see that full picture of the upside. So controlling the questions that you ask every founder and getting into habits of specific questions is very helpful here. Of course, you're going to ask questions that are specific to the founder and their company. But if you standardize let's say the first 15 or 20 questions, the basic questions you ask about the business, and you really listen to the founder as they're answering, then you can start to really build out and change the narrative from where you began. And you move away from putting the founder on the defensive of defending why they're building the company that they're building or defending why it's a big opportunity. And you're giving the founder opportunity to really highlight what could be.
That's such a great point, because this idea of defensiveness. And I know that as a woman of color that people have so often, whether I was fundraising, whether I was entering into various VC spaces, you notice when you start becoming defensive, and you ask yourself, how did I end up in this place where I'm defending myself versus speaking from a place of true abundance and talking about all the potential in the future? So I think there's also the onus of not only the investor, but the founder to realize when that's happening in the moment and push back on it and say, actually, I'm going to answer the question this way.